book nerds. Welcome to the Book Nerds podcast. Today is, of course, Halloween, but we are in for another treat. We have Sidhartha Mallya with us, who is making a debut with this book right here. If I'm honest, and I was telling him a little bit earlier that he was too honest. So, Siddhartha, first of all, welcome to the podcast. We talk about books here and especially the good ones. So, welcome to the podcast, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's happy to be talking about this book. Wish everyone happy Halloween. My favorite day of the year. So it's early in the morning for me here in the US. So it's a good way to start the day.
Yeah, and I'm I'm loving the little poster in the background. It suits the day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Halloween, of course, and your Instagram is like, it's crazy. And I didn't follow you earlier. I'm so sad about it, but it is a lot of fun, and you are having a gala time there. So okay, first of all, congratulations. You have been like, this is a refreshing book because people are afraid of opening up. People are, they are vulnerable, of course, but it's very hard to kind of write it down, which you have mentioned in the book. But before that, people who don't know about you, who perhaps in India or whoever is watching across the globe, who perhaps are not aware about who you are. So I would like to tell you that Siddhartha Mallya is an American-born, British-raised actor of Indian descent. He was born in Los Angeles, California, moved very quickly to the UK, was in boarding school. And I'll tell you why that is significant, because a chunk of the book also talks about, boarding school and what fun he had. Of course, some difficult times. But then he went on to Queen Mary University of London, where he graduated with BSc in business management, had worked in the corporate sector for a bit, and then, he has then he went on to train as an actor, and then he also got a Netflix original. I have to watch it. I haven't watched it yet. I'm so sorry, but I have to watch it again. But his latest passion is towards making people aware about mental health. And it's such a taboo, right? I mean, especially in India, it's such a taboo. We don't talk about it. His series called Consider series, which has been very that was a witty one there. And the title, especially, very smart one. He talks about mental health in different episodes, which you can check out on his Instagram. But today it's all about this one. We are going to talk about the book. And first of all, Siddhartha, a complete roller coaster. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's actually a roller coaster for you. Tell me something. When you mention in the book self work and self discovery, these are perhaps words which get thrown around a little bit. But what do you mean by them exactly, so that people also get a know-how of what do you mean exactly?
Well, I think self-work and self-discovery really ultimately comes down to knowing oneself and learning about oneself. And I think, if you ask the majority of people, do you know yourself? They'll be like, of course I know myself. What are you talking about? But really, I don't think many people do know themselves. And that's because either they've never really looked at themselves in the mirror. I mean, a lot of us are also conditioned, right, to not look at ourselves in the mirror and have those really deep and at times uncomfortable conversations, because it requires you to really look at yourself and say, okay, this is something that needs to change. And really admitting that something needs to change is kind of admitting that there's an issue in the first place. And most human beings aren't, we're not wired to do that. I also think it's a process. I'll also say, and I write this, I pretty much end the book by saying this, that self-work, is it's an ongoing process. It's not a quick fix sort of, I'll quickly read this book and suddenly I'll become better and my life will become enlightened. Of course, you read books. I read a ton of books along my journey and they help you in the moment, but it's an ongoing process. It's not just a quick fix solution. It's ongoing. And finally, as I say in the book, you know, work, right, is part of the word, self-work. And anything worth having in life takes effort, takes work. And this is no different. There will be times where self-help and self-work and self-discovery is beautiful, and I mean, it's always beautiful, and it's always open, and it's always, you know, it gets you very curious, but it can also be wildly uncomfortable, and it can hurt if you're willing to go to those places. And that's where it requires you to do the work in order to move forward.
Yeah. Actually, I had another question, but it is so interesting, when you talk about it, because you are trained as an actor from Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And, how did this help you kind of, first of all, learn the art? Because it's a difficult one. There's so many people pursuing it, but to stand out and kind of, find your niche, how did that process help, in kind of this help with the acting also?
So how did this self-help help the acting, or how did my acting help the
Yes.
self-help?
Perhaps it could be either way. But yeah.
I think it was both. You know, I think they both went hand in hand. Acting, I think, okay, so let's get this. Like, I think acting is actually, if you look at the craft, it's the wrong word to use, acting, because when we hear the word acting, what do we automatically assume? We assume performing and pretending, right? Usually when you hear acting, people will say it means pretending.
Yeah.
Acting is actually just living. Really, it's living in the moment and the recreation of real human feelings and emotions. And in order to really, you know, the best actors in the world are the ones that can access the depth of that real human emotion and bring that real rawness to what they're going through. You know, you look at, I don't know, I'm thinking of a film where, you know, look at something like Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice. That's not someone pretending. That is someone who is going through that experience there. And, you know, doing all my self-work, it's helped me open up and access these emotions and let the guard down. But on the other side, as I say in the book, going to drama school, that helped me lower my guard and become vulnerable in order to deal with the emotions. So it was all kind of entwined.
And you mentioned on page 49 about, kind of schools taking mental health seriously. I was also grew up in the 90s, and who cared about mental health? To be honest, I don't think so. But you have also said that things are improving. So would you like to tell us more about this? Like how things have improved, and how, of course, you were in boarding school, which is the toughest environment, I suppose, for people who are kind of, going through something. They are not aware about.
It wasn't something that was ever really spoken about, mental health. I remember, I think I wrote this in the book, or I don't know if I wrote it, but when I was like 13, I remember we had like this talk about drugs, right? I remember that someone came in and talked about the, you know, drugs and the harmfulness of drugs and all that sort of stuff. I don't remember anyone ever speaking about things like mental health. And I think today what the schools have realized is that the way we're talking to people and teaching, you know, kids about things like drugs, and we need to be teaching them about mental health as well. And I remember there was like I think one of the head teachers at my school that I went to, Wellington, who started after I left. You know, he came in, and every time there's a new headmaster, they interview him and they ask, okay, now if you were to get the job, how would you see yourself taking the school forwards? And, you know, Wellington, my school, used to be one of the best sports schools in the country. Academically, it was quite good, and, you know, all of this. And this guy came in and he said, look, we have these students here from the age of 13 to 18. We can produce the best athletes in the world. We can produce straight A students, but it's all going to mean nothing unless we let them leave here mentally safe. And that's why
Yeah.
there's a much bigger emphasis being put on mental health today in schools, which is
Yeah.
needed, right? And it's also needed because also, like, how old are you? I'll ask you.
I'm quite old. I'm 37.
Okay, I'm 34, so we're not that
Yeah.
different in age. But also when we grew up,
Yeah.
things like Zoom and Facebook and Instagram and social media just didn't exist.
Yeah.
Whereas today, the kids of today are exposed to so much more
Yeah.
than we ever were. And
Yeah.
because of that,
Truly.
it's important that they're given the right sort of, I guess, mental help to deal with it.
True. Yeah. And actually, it's true. I mean, there are some schools in Delhi who have introduced a happiness curriculum as well. So
Yeah.
it is an ongoing process, of course. I wanted to talk about 2016, when you kind of realized, and of course, the book is very therapeutic for so many people. I suppose it must be, because I was also kind of looking back and thinking about my life, what I was experiencing. Did I ignore some of the signals? Are they still there? Am I happy? And there are a bunch of 20 questions which you have given at the end of the book, which are very important. Everybody should go through them, and I think there were more than that. So yeah, at one point you say that, come on, Siddhartha, snap out of it. You are young, you are
Mm.
healthy, you have great friends, you have a great family. You have just come out of one of the world's best drama schools. You have the world at your feet. You have all these opportunities. You are so fortunate. There are people in the world way worse off than you are. Stop feeling like this. So this is a part where kind of everything is going for you, kind of, but still you are not, perhaps, should I use the word happy or content? What should be the word?
Yeah,
But this
I think
feeling is
content
must
probably.
be quite confusing, right?
It was confusing. I think it was confusing because as I wrote, in that little chapter, in that little paragraph you just read, it
Yeah.
was confusing because I just didn't know what was going on, because I was like,
Right.
it's the way that I'm feeling doesn't seem to be in
Yeah.
line with everything I have going on in my life right now. So that's what made
Right.
it confusing. And that
Yeah.
was a big lesson, that taught me not to kind of have a preconceived notion of how things should look and how things should feel and judge things,
Yeah.
and just allow things to happen and look at them for what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. A lot of people. I mean, I know so many people going through it, and the general perception is that this is a privileged person's problem. Generally speaking, it is always like that. I talk to my friends, they're like, you have a great life, and you have mentioned something like this also in the book, which was very, oh my god, is he talking about this? Don't. So this perception, how do we get rid of it? I mean, because it can happen to anyone. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
I think. Well, I think what we've got to do is we just got to keep the conversation going. And
yeah.
one of the main messages that I try and get across in this book, which I lead with, is mental health doesn't discriminate. Whether you are rich, poor, male, female, non-binary,
Yeah.
Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Buddhist,
Yeah.
Australian, Indian, Pakistani, English, 50 years old, 15 years old, it doesn't matter. Mental health doesn't care about all of these things, and everyone is susceptible to suffering from issues of mental health. And we've got to remember that, because what can happen, right? What can happen, and this is where it gets dangerous, is what you just said. If we
Yeah.
go around with this perception that it's just a quote unquote privilege problem, one of two
Yeah.
things can happen.
Yeah.
Well, either people who might not come from such privileged backgrounds,
Yeah.
who are going through things, may think, well, you know what? Only rich people can deal with mental health problems because therapy is expensive, medicine's expensive. I don't have money, therefore there's no hope for me.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. Yes, of course, therapy is not available widely in India,
Yeah.
and it can be expensive, and medicine is expensive, but there are so many other things you can do to look after your mental health that come at very little cost or at no cost at all. So that's
Yeah.
one side of the danger. The other side of the danger is if we continue this way of thinking, those people who do come from more privileged backgrounds and who do feel the way that I did might think, oh, what, but I shouldn't be feeling like this. And then they start beating themselves up and feeling guilty for the way that they're feeling, like I did, like that. And that's what happened to me. And so either way, it's I think a very dangerous way of looking at things. And I think that if anyone takes anything away from this live, it's that, look, this stuff doesn't discriminate. Like, everyone is susceptible and everyone has the right to feel the way they feel because they're human.
Yes, and at this point, I should mention Dr. and correct me if I don't get the pronunciation correct. Dr. Danica Zivo.
Zivert, I think.
Saying it?
Yeah.
Zivert.
No, you're right. Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about this. Kind of, you have said that it is not necessary that the first therapist you visit will work for you. It can be, you can go to other therapists and find the right person. And tell us a little bit about that experience, because some people get scared suddenly. And I've experienced this with friends, of course. They get scared. They go to someone and they get scared.
Yeah, well, it's like anything. It's a relationship, right? You have to look at therapy as a relationship. It's a dance. It's, for a two-person dance to work, both people have to be giving and taking and be in sync. And that's the thing with therapy. Like, I went to someone first in London, as I write in the book. I didn't feel very comfortable with that person. And that was it. Whereas I found Danica and I felt at ease, and she made me feel at ease, and it made me want to open up. Because remember, these things, a therapist can only give you as much as you're willing to share. And you're only going to be willing to share as comfortable as you feel with the person you're sharing with. I always liken it like it's bear with me with the analogy, but I've been doing so many events for the book over the past month. These sessions that we're doing like right now, they're only as, for me, I can only be as good as the questions you're asking me, right?
Obviously, yeah.
And you can only ask me things based on how open I'm willing to be. So it's a two-way thing, and it's the same thing. I'll use the same analogy with therapy, is that it's a two-way thing. These things are only as good as how much someone's willing to put in. And like with anything in life, the more comfortable you feel with someone, the more you're going to want to open up. And that's why I think that if you are going to go down that route, and you can, maybe try a few people out and see who you gel with and click with first.
It's amazing you say that. And of course, the first thing is that you need to go out there and kind of seek for help. And you did. Of course, you have talked about OCD, and how people ignore it. OCD is, like you have said in the book also, it's like perhaps an obsession with some routines and etc. It is passed off like that. It is very easy to pass it off like that. And you have talked about types of OCD as well, which I suppose have figured in your Consider series also. So tell us a little bit about this OCD and your experience with it. And of course, the fear of God, scrupulosity OCD, that was quite something for me, to be honest.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll come on to that, because that in itself is its own it could be in its own book, to be honest.
True.
So OCD is definitely a very misunderstood mental health related issue, and that's why that's the only chapter, if you see, that's written slightly differently, in that I take a little bit of time. And by the way, we will have time to answer these questions, right? That people are.
Of course. After this one, we can take her question. Yes.
So I take a little bit of time in that chapter to actually explain what OCD is, because, as you said, it's a very, very misunderstood condition, and everyone thinks they know what OCD is, where I think very few people actually know what it entails. And I was like that, right? I mean, if you ask people what is OCD, they'll be like, oh, it's being neat and tidy. And yeah, that is a part of it, but it's a very small part of it. OCD is one of those things that, and I think that's the chapter in the book which might have resonated the most with people who suffer from it because it's quite niche, right?
You're right.
But those who suffer from
Sorry
it,
to cut
those who
you.
suffer,
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off there, but actually, it was the part which was very kind of. I mean, I felt that, oh my God, okay, this nobody knows about it. I mean, I
yeah,
haven't met people who are aware about it.
for sure. And what I liked about it, I mean, I say that, sorry, not what I liked about it, but what gave me a little bit of confidence and hope is when I did the episode on OCD in the Consider This series,
Yeah.
I had someone write to me saying, thank you so much for sharing this, because growing up, I used to do the same things and I did not know
Wow.
what it was. I thought I was alone. And I was like, yeah, I mean, and you can understand why, right? Because
Yes.
some of the compulsions you do, and for your listeners right now, I'll just quickly say that what makes it OCD is, everyone has painful thoughts, right? It happens. Difference with someone with OCD and not OCD is that if you don't have OCD, it's those thoughts come and they go. But with someone with OCD, they have the thought, which becomes an obsessive thought. They can't shake it. Then they feel like they have to do something in order to get rid of the thought, or do something to stop the event from taking place that the thought is saying, right? And that's when you do a compulsion. And it becomes a disorder when it gets out of hand and in your way. So it caused me a lot of anguish growing up, and there are so many different sides to OCD. You don't have to suffer from all of it. You can suffer from one or the other. You can suffer from some, and then you can get better, and you can suffer from others. One of them that I suffered from was this scrupulosity OCD, which up until 2 years ago, I didn't even know was a word. Like, I didn't know it was a thing. And as I said, it's like this fear of God, which is, if I don't do this right, if I do this wrong, if I don't pray this way, if I don't do that way, then I'm going to get punished. So in this instance, the obsessive thought is this fear of punishment. And the compulsions, in order to try and avoid that fear, are the excessive praying, hand washing, all that sort of stuff. And I think it's
It must be
something that,
tiring, right? It must be tiring, so tiring, because
not just tiring, mentally, physically. I look back on it, and I look back on it now, and I can sit here talking about it, but I don't know how I don't know how I operated. I don't know how I lived in this.
Does
I
it
don't
creep
really don't
back?
know.
Does it
Does it
creep
come back?
back also now? Because it is kind of tough.
It's OCD is what's known as a chronic condition, which means it can never be cured. It can be managed. So it means that these obsessive thoughts are always going to be there. But at least now I have a better understanding of it, what it entails, and I have the tools to deal with it. So
you have become smarter to deal with it. Let's take Sweta's
no. Can
question
I stop you?
also.
Let me just say one thing before we move on. I don't think this is where it is. I'm not smarter. I'm just more aware. And I think when it comes to mental health, awareness is key. Because if you're not aware of something, you can't change it. So awareness is key here. Now I'm more aware of myself, A, and B, of OCD, so I'm able to better manage it.
I feel that you're so lucky to be aware, because most of us are not aware about what's happening, and sometimes we ignore the initial signs.
But
all of us.
For sure. But let me again say on that before we take Shweta's question is that I'm not some sort of superhero, right? I am not special in any way, shape, or form. I just did the work. I did the work that is available to every single person to do. Right. And as I said, you don't have to go to therapy. You don't have to take medication. That you could do tons of things out there you can do to help yourself. But so it's not. I'm not some special guru or anything like that. I've just done the work, and it's work that's available to everyone.
And in fact, you have mentioned is in the book also. This is not a self-improvement book, or that's self-help book. So it's just a personal experience, and work needs to be done, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because obviously I had a great I have a great relationship with my publishers, Westland, and they were great to me.
Yeah.
Like from the start, they said, literally go and do your own thing. Like they didn't try and tell me what to write and this and that. They were, they trusted me. They saw the Consider This series. They knew I wanted to talk about mental health, and they said, go and do it your own way.
Yeah.
So obviously, like with any book, right? And I'm sure you've spoken to a ton of authors, everything evolves as the process goes on.
True.
But when it finished, I'd shown it to an editor out in the US from one of the big publishing houses here, and their response was, "We think you should make it more prescriptive." I said, "Okay, well, what do you mean by prescriptive?" And they said, "Well," I said, "Do you mean like the Sid Mallya way to happiness?" And they're like, "Yes." And I said, "You know what? I don't agree with you." I said, "I can't do that." I said, "Because first of all, I don't have some big, like do this and your life will get better. I'm not trying to be a Jay Shetty or an Eckhart Tolle or a Deepak Chopra,
Yes.
one of these self-help gurus. That's not me.
It's
What
easier to
I'm trying to show,
market.
yeah,
Siddhartha,
but
it's
that's what
easier
they
to
said.
market,
That's what
right?
they said. That's what they said. They said it's easier to market, and that's what people want. I said, yeah, but do you know where I think I can offer value? Is just by being honest. Because what I've learned is that a lot of people just want to feel like they're not alone and that someone else has gone through something similar to them. And I felt like where I can add the most value to society is just being honest about my story, as opposed to trying to tell people how to fix themselves.
Right. Awesome. Let's take Sweta's question. Do you believe nature can be the best therapist?
And this leads right nicely into this question. So, hi, Shweta. Thanks for this question. I think nature can definitely be a great therapist. I think it's something that is there and it's available to all of us free of charge, just to go outside, go for walks, go and connect with nature. I write in the book, that's one of the things that I did, that running is something that I love doing.
Wandering in wonder. You said wandering in
Wandering in
wonder.
wonder, yeah, which I'll come to,
That
but
was
running for me.
superb. That is superb. It is such a an underrated thing, because
For sure.
we don't have the time for it.
And we take for granted our surroundings. Like I like to run outdoors. Now running used to be just a form of exercise for me, but now running outdoors, connecting with the earth, the air, the breeze, the trees, it does help you. It's huge. And you just mentioned wandering in wonder, which is,
Yeah.
I coined that term where it was like, you just go outside and walk and look what's all around you. And I think we take for granted that, and don't get me wrong, because I look at your bookshelf behind you, and I've just written a
Yeah.
book as well, and I'm not going to say that books and TV are bad, because that's not what this is. But we've
Yes.
also got to remember that their books are stories, they're real accounts, TV shows are accounts. But you go outside, walk around, just have a look around you.
Yeah.
There are so many stories being told right in front of our eyes all the time, if you're willing to look at them.
True. Amazing. Yeah. Let's
So
take
thank
another
you, Shweta,
question.
for that.
Yeah. Suja S says, insightful. Did you have a good support system around you when you went through all of this?
Yeah, I'd say, hi, Suja. Yeah, I'd say that I wasn't very vocal about it to anyone. Like, I didn't really talk about any of this stuff. I just kind of did my own thing and, went to therapy, and, I didn't really talk to anyone about doing it.
Yeah.
So in terms of a support system, I had my therapist, and she was very supporting, of course, and she was really the lead. I also live on my own in America. I don't have any family here or anything. But when I talked about the stuff I was going through, when I put out my Consider This series and all, family, friends were all very supportive. They might not have fully understood everything, what I was going through, but they, no one ever made me feel like wrong for sharing what I did or for going through what I did. So I think in that respect, I was very fortunate.
Yeah. You have talked about an instance where you were at a wedding or something, and everybody was there, your friends, family,
Yeah.
everybody, but you were not happy. You are amongst your favorite people in this world. They are enjoying, they're having
Yeah.
fun, and you are just not there. I mean, it has happened to so many of us. But in this case, how do you, kind of understand that signal?
I think it's different for everyone. I think there are certain signs that you can look out for, I think, when it comes to depression. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into these because people can, people can go and look these up, and it'd be better for them to do their own kind of look into it. But I think the general consensus is something like if you're feeling, or the way that you're feeling lasts for more than 2 weeks, then you should seek help. But
Okay.
for me, it was just, I knew something was up because I'm a very people person. I love connecting with people. I just love being around people. I'm an only child. So when I'm around people, I love it. And I remember being at that wedding feeling like I do not want to speak to a soul. And, I was like, okay, this is not
Yeah.
in line with me. And so that's how it kind of, it hit me.
Yeah.
It did really resonate and register on the radar.
Yeah. Yeah. You have talked about divorce, and a lot of kids, go through this, and it's so sad. I mean, it happens, and nobody has got any clue how to, make kids kind of, um, perhaps I don't know how should I say it, kind of, take them through the process, and perhaps it's tough for parents as well. A little bit about that, because these issues have kind of, crept up on you later in life. And
Yeah.
of course, you have talked about your relationship with your father, the conversation you
Mm.
have had recently with him, and which has given you kind of closure. And I won't be speaking about it because people have to read the book, they have to spend money, you
Yeah.
so I'm not going to go into detail, but a little bit about that aspect, which is quite, at the crux of this book.
Yeah, well, I think divorce is another thing that really doesn't get given, or it might do today, but wasn't given the attention that I think it deserves either. And
Yeah.
the reason is because, people are like, oh, well, it's so common. Sadly, it's become so common that people just think
Yeah.
it's a normal part of life, when
Yeah.
really it's not, right? It's an unnatural occurrence. No one gets
Yeah.
married with
Yeah.
the intention of getting divorced. So it's a
Obviously. Yeah.
trauma. It's a trauma. It's
Yeah.
a trauma to the child, but also to the parent who's going through the divorce. And
Yeah.
as I said in the book, that me and my mum have spoken about this, and we've reminisced and we've looked back at it, and you kind of can, the only thing to do is laugh about it now. But I think we both agreed that when it happened, it was, my mum was, I think, maybe a few years older than what you are today, your age, which is not old at all to have these major life changes happening, and there was
Yeah.
no guidance of what to do about it. I think it's getting better today. I was on Instagram the other day and something popped up on my feed, and it was a video or something. I clicked on it, and the person's profile said she was the divorce coach. I was like, oh,
Oh,
this is
wow.
interesting. So I had a look.
Wow.
Yeah, and I went on their page, and it was, like it's someone whose literal career is helping parents and
Yeah.
children navigate divorce. And I was like, that's great,
Wow.
because I think
Amazing.
it's something that needs to be given more attention, because it does leave
Yeah.
scars.
Yeah.
I remember speaking to my therapist, and she said that it's not uncommon to see children who come from divorce suffer from PTSD, and
Wow.
PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. And
Yeah.
usually we hear PTSD being talked about in relation to soldiers that come back from war zones, right? Not in,
Yeah.
you're not
Right.
going to think that a child whose parents got divorced would deal with that, but
Yeah.
she said it can happen. And
Yeah.
knowing all of this, I think it's another one of these things that should be given more time a day.
Yeah. So Bala says that I did buy the book. So I think so. While we were talking about this book, he has bought the book.
Thank
Bala,
you very
do share
much.
your feedback. Do share your feedback on Amazon as well. My final question, and it is very important. Page 113, you say, be the king or the queen of your own good time,
I'll get
and
it
it
up.
is
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's so amazing that you have flipped the entire slogan, and this is so relevant and contemporary, uh, for so many people. I'm sure you have written the book and forgotten the page numbers, but I have, been through
No, I've
this.
got it here. I've got it here.
Oh, you got it,
Yeah.
got it, got it. Be the king or the queen of your own good time, and that's the kind of thing. Especially youngsters who are going through a lot have to deal with social media and so many other things right now. Especially after the pandemic, a lot of people have had a hard time. So yeah, this flip of the slogan was amazing, and I mean, uh, I am a cricket fan, like a die-hard one, and we have
Oh,
missed
but
you
then
in.
you're missing the game right now,
I
doing this.
know, I know, but it's fine because I am happy to say that we all miss you in the IPL. By the way, anyways, I had to
Well,
address it. I know you had a hard time in India, and you have written it in the book, but we
no,
missed
no,
you
we
in the
can talk
IPL.
about it.
Anyways,
I'll tell you right
yeah.
now, but if you want to know the score, you might not be too amused.
Why not? Why not?
It's
Let's go for it.
13.5 overs. India are 66 for 4.
Wow. Okay, so good that we didn't miss much then. Okay,
Yeah,
it's not a good
okay.
situation.
No, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't want to leave you on that. But let me talk to you for a minute. I mean, I don't know how much time we have. If we have a moment or two,
We
but I
have
could.
we have a couple of minutes, of course.
I'll tell you about the IPL and things like that. You know, as I mentioned in
Yeah.
the book, and I mean, you know, we're going back the IPL when it started like 10 years ago, right? It's a
Yes.
different beast today.
Before
But
you start,
what
I
I
want to just say one thing. Just want to say one thing. The passion back then, it's not there anymore. So
no,
in
I
all
don't.
of us.
I think that first of all, I just think, and this is my true thing, I think there's just way too much cricket going on. Like
Too
there's
much.
just too much of the thing now. And what the IPL was special, and I'm not saying it's not special now. Of course, it's still special today, but I feel
Yeah.
like that original hurrah factor of it has diminished somewhat. But
True.
I'll tell you my experience with the IPL. What I loved about the IPL, as I write in the book, is that I was there, and of course, everyone saw me, from the papers and the matches and
Yeah.
all of that, and it looked like it
Yeah.
was a lot of fun, which of course it was. But I was also
Yes.
basically running that team. And at
Right.
22 years old, it's stressful, right?
You
It's
were
really
just
heavy.
22. You were
Yeah, I
just
was when was
22.
it? 2010. So what is that? 11 years ago?
Oh
No,
my gosh.
23.
So
23.
basically just after college, right? Just after
Yeah,
college.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I came back, and it's first of all, as a sports fan, how invested you get into it. And now, of
We're
course, with
crazy.
this, yeah,
We are crazy bunch.
crazy. But let me tell you, from the IPL point of view, it was a huge minefield for my OCD. As I said, like,
No.
I mean, I
Yeah.
would lose kilos of weight during those seasons.
Wow.
And I was so superstitious during the matches that it was almost freaking. We made a joke. I was speaking to the guy who was the chairman of the IPL at the time, and I was like, they were doing all these gimmicks back then, right? Like where they'd have like the owners sitting on the sidelines and all these sorts of things. There were like all
Yeah.
these like different things they were doing. They would get people to interview the crowd. So I was like, for one of the games, we should strap me up to a heart rate monitor and a blood pressure monitor and see how it fluctuates. We nearly did it during one of the games because
Oh my
it was
gosh.
so stressful. And with the OCD on top of that, it was a minefield. I can't blink.
Wow.
I can't do this. I can't do that. And, people might think that's just superstition because, people during sports have superstitions. But for me,
Yeah.
it went way
I know.
further than just a superstition, and it was really painful. And the other thing I loved about RCB, and Bala here has written RCB is definitely missing.
Yes.
It was a family for me. It was a family for me. It gave me that family that I felt like I would been missing
Yeah.
out on. I was
Yeah.
living with the team. I was traveling with the team, and then of course we
Yeah.
had. It wasn't just the players. The players' families were with us. I got to know the
Yeah.
families well. I got to know their kids well,
Yeah.
and it was just being a part of that family environment, which I
Yeah.
loved. I really, really enjoyed it more than
Yeah.
the cricket itself.
And you love family. I know for after reading the book that you have always been seeking for that sort of connect. And I'm getting greedy here. One final thing. You have talked about boozing in the book, and you managed to give it all away. But you have also said that I just might start again, which is like it's such a common thing, especially. I mean, in India we love our booze, right? I mean, it's everybody knows that, but a lot of people can't let go of it.
Yeah. When I say I might start again, we got to put this in context. Though, is that I was
Yeah,
never an alcoholic, right? So it's not
right.
like I stopped because I was an alcoholic and it was getting in the way. Da, 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 da. For
Yeah,
me, it just wasn't working at that particular point in time. So the reason I say, and what I try to say in the book, and the reason I say that I might start again is because I'm not trying to say alcohol's bad. But it
right.
comes down to how you started this conversation, which comes down to
Yeah,
self-work and self-reflection. Is you need to figure out what's bad for you at this moment in time.
yeah, yeah.
Something that's bad for you might not be bad for me. Something that agrees
Right.
with me might not agree with you. And I'm saying that right now, 3 years ago, when
Yeah,
alcohol wasn't working for me. And down the line, if I feel like I can incorporate it into my life in a safe way, I will. Like, I don't think there has to be any hard and fast rules to anything in life. But that was one of the big things that I got. It was one of the big catalysts for writing this book. Was when on the 1 year anniversary of when I stopped drinking, I put up a post saying it's been 1 year, and I got just tons of messages back from people who said, we feel the same way, but we don't know how to stop. Like you said, like, what if our friends ostracize us? What if we get peer pressure? But if you can do it, then I feel like we can do it as well. So thank you. And I was like seeing just how being open about drinking could help people. I was like, well, then maybe I can be open about other things in life. And that's how the book came about, actually.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, of course, guys, go to Amazon, buy it, or buy it from an independent bookstore. It's available everywhere. Okay, final message for you. I think someone is trying to, it's a pleasure listening to you, Sidhartha. I have been through some of the things you have spoken about, so I can identify with you. So Priyakshi says,
oh, hi, Priyakshi. Yeah, no, look, and thank you so much for sharing that as well. You know, it's brave of you to admit that as well. And I think, I think what Priyakshi just said is that's all it is, right? Is that we just all need to be more open about our stories, so more people can feel less alone and feel seen. And thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. And guys, as I was saying, go to Amazon or buy it off an independent bookstore. Leave your review. Sidhartha, of course, all the authors value it. You go there and express what you felt about the book. You can go to Sidhartha's Instagram as well. He has a lot of fun. At the same time, there is informational content there on the Consider series. So
absolutely, yeah.
And thank you so much, Sidhartha, for taking out time. It has been wonderful. It has been one of the best interactions I've had this year. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh man, no, well, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you to all your listeners. I know it's evening time in India on a Sunday, so thanks and there's an India cricket match going on. So for all of you who took the time to watch me instead, I really hope that you've been.
Let's hope India
had
wins.
A good time. And thank you so much. And let me just say on that note, yes, please do buy the book. Go and buy it from an independent bookstore. Why not? I think we've got to support independent businesses. You know, I think, and especially in the book world. I don't know how it is in India, but certainly in the US and other places, independent book retailers are a dying breed. So we've got to do what we can to support them.
True.
And do that. And let me know what you think about it. Message me, leave a review, and thank you so much for having me.
Looking forward to so much more. I hope there are more books coming. I really hope.
We'll see for sure. All right, man. Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.